Hello, everyone. Welcome. Please type in the questions box. We do not use chat. We use questions and go to webinar. Your name and where you're from. I see a Georgia facilitator there, not too far from me in South Carolina. I'm about 15 minutes from the Georgia line here. Good morning to everyone. Is Susie with us?
Yes, she is. Susie is right behind the curtain, ready to come out in 3 minutes. There she is.
3 minutes. Okay, and during that 3 minutes, I'm going to ask you to again introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And so Susie's looking those over right now. And also to remind you that Susie has hidden a picture of Phil in her PowerPoint, and the first person to type in to questions if they see that wins a door prize. And that if you are typing in questions, don't be alarmed that you can't see other people's questions, but Susie can see them and Joanna and I can see them as well. If you're having any difficulty with your audio or your webcam visual, just type in and Joanna will respond to you personally to try and help you work through that during Susie's presentation. I think, have I forgotten anything? Just if you are typing in questions, just make sure that it's content or webcam related, right? Webinar related. And we've got people from Texas, New York, Oklahoma, Wyoming. We've got somebody that knows you here. Don't know if you saw that, Susie, from Sarnia.
Yeah, from Sarnia. Great. Yeah.
And I will continue to try to post the links. I'm having a little trouble getting them. I did post them. If you go way up at the very top of, there's one. Okay, I'm sending it to everyone. And I'll do that periodically so that you have the resources you need to follow up afterwards. So we've got 2 more minutes to wait for folks. Out the Upper Peninsula. There's a different world up there. Good morning, Lisa.
Terry and Susie, I see that we have Tina joining us today and Treasure. Good morning. Good morning, Tyler and Tara Lee.
We are going to actually save and have a Q&A at the end, but Jawanda and I will be looking at your questions, and as Susie looks them over at the end, if we see something that we think that she needs to respond to particularly, we'll let her know. So type in your question, make sure it's clear enough what part of the content you're asking about, so, because that will have to wait till the end pretty much for questions to be answered. We've got 1 more minute. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so this is Susie Johnson-Smith, and she's going to be talking to us about coaching, and she is a very experienced Bridges presenter and has been training her staff in Bridges and has sort of created that institutional change within her organization over the last how many years, Susie? 5, 10?
Yeah, we're going on 7 now. Yep.
Okay, good. And so I'm going to let Susie tell you more about herself. Thank you, Susie.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone from Peterborough, Ontario, Canada. I'm so excited to be here with you today. Terry tells me I have a little bit of a lag in my internet, and so I'll try and talk a little bit slower. It appears that every time I'm doing something online is when the internet decides to act up on me. But anyhow, so that you see on the PowerPoint is actually of our Peterborough lift locks, and that's located on the Trent Canal, and we're kind of famous for it here in Peterborough. For those of you that don't know where Peterborough is, it's central eastern Ontario, about 90 minutes towards Kingston from Toronto. So usually if I say that, and you get a feel for where we are on the busiest highway of the world off the 401. busiest highway in North America. And so we have a population of about 85,000 here in Peterborough. So we're a mid-sized municipality. And I have been working in human and social services straight out of university. So for 28 years now, I'll age myself, I've been working in human services, from frontline service delivery and case management and social work to leadership roles to, and in the latter part of my career more in coaching, certified life coach with the Canadian Coaches Federation, and certified trainer for adult learners, trainer and teacher for adult learners, which is different obviously than teaching children as adult learners. And so I've sort of been frontline in case management, as well as in leadership roles, as well as in staff training. And I'm really excited to share with you the journey that we've been on here in Peterborough to not only grow our Bridges community, but really make impactful changes to our organization and ultimately impacting our community as a result as well. So we have a short amount of time for a lot of information. I'll ask a few times for you to type in some quick answers in the questions so that I can get a feel for where you're at in your community and how new this information is for you. And then we'll open it up at the end for some broader questions about the shift that we've been making. So welcome. Now, Peterborough Social Services, I told you where we are and what do we do. So I work for the municipality of the city of Peterborough, and we receive funding from the province of Ontario to administer social assistance, housing, rent geared to income housing units, informal and formal subsidized childcare, and until this we're responsible for administering and providing a lot of employment supports and working with our local employers and helping to prepare people to be job ready. We also have a huge homelessness budget and portfolio where we fund and work in conjunction with our local shelters to work on diversion from the shelter system for housing. So we've got a lot of stuff happening under the umbrella of our division under the city of Peterborough, and we're service system managers, meaning that we receive funding from the province, and then we often, we'll write up service agreements with local, for example, our local addiction center to provide intensive services to mutual clients. So we hold contracts with community agencies for the provision of services across the community. So in saying that, it seemed to really fit when we started to be introduced to the Bridges model, because that manages also other services in the community. So we're in a good position to influence other organizations around the service delivery model that we all, are operating under. So that's a little bit about our visions and values and who we are in the City of Peterborough Social Services. And I've been working for the City of Peterborough, as I mentioned, for 28 years in a variety of different roles. And in 2012, I was overseeing staff training and development at the time for our division, which is a large division, as I mentioned, and over 100 staff. And we brought in an AHA process consultant, which I now am, which is a career dream come true. And so we brought in an AHA process consultant to facilitate a Bridges Out of Poverty Day. And that was our first exposure to Bridges Out of Poverty in 2012. But for me, it was a life-altering moment because I had been to so much training in my career, and I thought I was relatively good with clients and meeting them where they're at. But Bridges opened up an entire new lens for me and made me aware of my unconscious bias, of my hidden rules, of all the things that I'm sure many of you have experienced as well when you're first exposed to Bridges. And as I've said all along, once you've actually really digested the Bridges material, there's no going back. You can't undo that learning like you can with a lot of other training, quite frankly. So when you go to some other training, it's really great in the moment, but when you go back to your desk and you default back to the way we always do things and we get busy and buried in the paperwork. But Bridges really was different for me. I wanted to do something more with this, and I wanted to really bring it alive in our organization and in our community, but it starts at the individual level. So I had some work to do individually, to digest that material first. But I knew I needed help, so we created an internal working group of champions who implemented to implement the concept. So other people that were feeling really passionate about the material, who went to the workshop and wanted to do more with it and didn't want to just forget what we were learning and default back. So we created an internal group within our organization of champions. And there's a lot that I can share with people about what not to do when you're creating an internal working group of champions. And the first thing I would say is make sure that you've got your leadership on board. So that was a lesson learned by us, because we didn't have the entire leader division on board. And so then it's not supported with a strong foundation. So there's lots of areas where I've lived and learned to get to this point 7-8 years later. So our internal working group has implemented a number of different projects and things, including creating our client advisory group here in Peterborough. So now we have a policy where we do not implement a new program and service for our clients without running it through the client advisory group for input first. So we have a formal client advisory group that was created. That's just one of the many examples that and that I'll share a little bit at the end, that we have implemented here in our Bridges journey. And most recently is our implementation of life stabilization coaching. And so that's what I'm talking primarily about today. I got certified to become a Bridges Out of Poverty trainer in 2016 to provide staff training. You know, in order to really normalize Bridges, then you really do need a certified community trainer. And now as an AHA consultant, I actually conduct a lot of the train the trainer. So it's amazing how life changes along the way. So I still provide training for my community, but I also provide training through AHA process for communities that don't have a certified trainer and or certified new trainers. In 2017, then, we launched our Getting Ahead. Just type in the question box for me if you are a community that is facilitating Getting Ahead workshops in your community. Just a yes or a no for me, so that I can get a feel for how many people are facilitating Getting Ahead, which is the participatory component of Bridges Out of Poverty for our clients who are ready for change. I'm not seeing anything there. Yeses or no's? Anybody running Getting Ahead? I'll just keep moving on as you type in then.
Susie, so there are a ton of yeses. I'd say 2/3 yeses at least.
Okay, great. Thank you, Terry. Sorry, something is frozen there on my question box. So thank you for that. So that's great, because really, you know, we were on this journey of training all the service providers, but when we really started to sink our teeth into Getting Ahead as well, that's when you start to move that needle of impact for your community. That starts to balance out the power. That starts to, you know, get the service users and the service administrators at the same table talking about common themes and causes of poverty in your community. And it's just unstoppable what can happen when you start getting ahead in your community, and then staying ahead as well. So staying ahead is like, my analogy that I've used for a long time now is getting ahead is like a Band-Aid, and staying ahead is like the ongoing healing for our clients who want to keep working at building those 11 essential resources for long-term stability. And so staying ahead is our monthly gathering in conjunction with our trained community partners. That's what makes it beautiful, to facilitate workshops that the clients are building themselves and helping us create to keep building those 11 essential resources. So for those of you that have trained in Bridges or Getting Ahead, you know what I mean by the 11 essential resources. And then additionally, we partnered with our local Employment Ontario office, we have 3 Employment Ontario offices here in Peterborough, who work with our local employers, particularly minimum wage and entry-level employers, to start providing Bridges training for employers. And then that really started to move the needle of impact as well. So we had, you know, training our service providers, training the clients that were trying to get out of, you know, being stuck in generational poverty, and then starting to train our employers as well. So we were on this beautiful Bridges journey as it was. And then came some funding changes and things that were going to be happening, which I'll talk to you in a moment about. Just quickly in the question box, also type for me, how many of you are facilitating or have partners who are facilitating workplace stability for your local entry-level employers? Just a sign of yeses or nos there. You seeing anything, Terry?
I'm seeing mostly no's here. I would say
Okay.
80% no's. Some are starting and some, a few have. It's a handful though.
Great. Okay. So again, it's about moving that needle of impact, whether it's bridges to healthcare or emotional poverty or K-12 or workplace stability. It depends on where your primary sector is. But for us, we were working with a lot of minimum wage employers trying to place our clients into employment, and the employers were at a disconnect with their employees and expecting some of the same, behaviors and decision making that they themselves would operate under. So we could see how bridges would benefit the employers. So that was that piece of the puzzle. What we learned, obviously, through bridges, I've just pulled a few of the slides out because I'm sure most of you are familiar with bridges out of poverty, is the power of relationships and how significant relationships are. So I just put that quote in there for us to be reminded that day one, Bridges Out of Poverty is so powerful about recognizing your own societal lens, the societal lens of others, and how we can work better together to improve relationship and really honor the societal lens of one another. And so that power of relationships just jumps out at us over and over again in Bridges Out of Poverty, as we know. And we also learn in Bridges Out of Poverty about the 11 essential resources. So for those of you that aren't familiar with it, this is just a snapshot of the 11 essential resources that are identified through Getting Ahead, where clients that are participating in Getting Ahead are completing an intensive self-assessment on these 11 resources, and then starting to set SMART goals on how to work on building each of these resources. So this was a huge aha moment for us around these 11 resources, in that for years, our organization had spent time with Band-Aid solutions. We'd work with a client, we'd get them housed. We'd work with a client, we'd get them into into employment. We'd work with a client in helping them to re-navigate relationships or whatever the case may be, and get into safer relationships and housing. But we were missing the foundational work that Bridges now brought to light for us, that we were the Band-Aid solution of getting people jobs or getting people housed kept, the recidivism rate was huge because we kept having them come back through the door because we hadn't worked on the foundational stuff. And for us, the 11 resources was that foundational stuff around really starting to look at how can we help our clients build their emotional resources, the ability to cope, the resiliency. How can we help them build their language register to be able to negotiate and navigate in a middle-class world? All of these elements that we learn about the 11 essential resources. So that's spoken of, as you all know, in Bridges Out of Poverty Day 1. And so we learned this, and we knew that we wanted to do more with it. We also knew we wanted to do more with this particular slide around the tools, around each of the tools that at the end of a day one Bridges training, we touch on these tools, but practice makes perfect, right? And it's like writing with your left hand for the first time, that when you are, trying something new, if it's uncomfortable, you may default back to the way you've done things. And so we were taking it one step further with our staff to really have intensive training on the 11 essential resource assessment, as well as how to use these tools and how to practice each of these tools that we touch on at the end, as mentioned, of the day one training for Bridges Out of Poverty. So we were conducting training as a certified Bridges training. I was digging a little bit deeper with staff to be practicing these tools and training on, using bracketing and training on using mental models with our clients, because our Getting Ahead grads tell us how powerful mental models are. So there was all of this training happening. And at the same time, we found out that our province is transforming social assistance. So this slide kind of explains to you how originally, so the CMSM stands for the municipality and the SSM stands for the service system manager. And the SSM is the newly created process through a prototype from the province of Ontario to say, we're going to split all the work that the municipality, I'm really condensing this, but we're going to split the work that the municipality does, find a separate service system manager for the employment type of work, and have the municipality really focus on the life stabilization. So we were on this path already, but it took the workplace stability training and the engagement with the employers off of our plate and over to the SSMs. Now our implementation date is January 1st for this change in funding. So we've lost some funding due to this. And our local college is going to be our service system manager and focus on the employment retention piece. We're going to focus on the CMSM side with the life stabilization piece, which is what many of us went to school for. So again, knowing that we were on the right path with the Bridges work. The province further came out with their model to say, here's our draft model. And as you can see by the 4 circles, it connected directly with Bridges. We knew that we were on the right path then, because we were already a couple of years ahead of what the province was coming out with recently. This is only this year that the province has come out with this life stabilization framework and separating employment from life stabilization. So there's a recognition that we need to do that foundational work with our clients first before job placement, before we've actually got them job ready. Because again, we keep seeing the same clients come back through the door. And so, and not retaining and keeping the job or the housing or whatever the case may be. And so when we saw this model, then we knew that we were on the right path with our Bridges Out of Poverty work. We knew that the 11 resources directly were linked to many of these. As you can see, health, we've got physical and mental health resources as our 11 resources. We've got our, our literacy skills, our formal register skills, all of that through the life skills piece in your education. Our getting ahead people and getting by people we learn about in the community workshop. Sorry, we learn about sorry, my coworker puppy has decided that he's going to pant and walk around the house, and I'm not sure why. So we learn about the people, the getting ahead people and the getting by people in our life in the Bridges model, and now we could connect it directly with the life stabilization framework coming from the province around the community supports and the people in our life, and the safety aspect, integrity and trust and safety. We could see all of that directly linking to the community supports. I am so sorry, but I don't know why my dog is, and I have nobody home right now. And then our financial supports, our financial financial means to get ahead and get by is a resource in Bridges, and it was also identified through the life stabilization framework as well from the province. Are there any questions at all about that? Not sure what to do about my puppy so I apologize, he hasn't done this at all. As a result, I'm going to just step away and put him outside. I'm so sorry. Terry, just jump in.
I have a cat who sometimes screams at the door when I'm on a webinar. I think they hear us talking and they think we're talking to them. I don't know. So appreciate your patience. The slides are available, and I have, Diane, I have put the link on the questions several times. Christine, go to questions, not chat, and you will not be able to see what other people are saying, but we will be able to see and communicate through that. Okay, everything okay, Susie?
Yes, I am so sorry. He never does that, and I don't know what he just got into there. I'm home alone, and he just decided to be a horrible coworker. So my apologies,
you've had a lot
everyone.
of good comments about the puppy, so don't feel bad.
Okay, thank God. Sorry, everyone. All right, we're all human, right? So as I mentioned in the last slide, we knew that we were on the right track with the life stabilization framework. The province came out with this. There was a direct correlation with the 11 essential resources, so we knew we were on the right path, which is, pretty phenomenal, because when I'm on these provincial calls lately, sometimes, we're all over the map because the province is creating a prototype and everybody doesn't know what they necessarily mean by life stabilization. And so I felt like we were ahead of the game. We have been talking the whole year of 2020 on creating work buckets, key priorities, and a work plan that was based around the new life stabilization model for province. And so as a result, we've restructured our entire division into these 5 work buckets, and that's what we're calling them. And so we've got teams of life stable that we've recruited. We've done, we have recruited for the right position and the right people to be in the right position. And so we've got intake referral workers in the intake bucket, and we've got life stabilization coaches that are in that middle bucket that I've circled blue for everyone. And so we knew then, we were already on the path with our bridges work, and then we got the information from the province. And then on top of that now, we created these work buckets. And so then we started to do some brainstorming, and we started to talk about, what do we mean by being people-centered and client-driven? When we talk about life stabilization, we know that as coaches, we need to really dig into the foundation with our bridges knowledge and our new knowledge of our societal lenses and how to build better rapport. Now we needed to have some brainstorming with this bucket of life stabilization coaches, all the staff that had expressed interest and applied to be in that role. We knew that we needed to brainstorm on what we meant by that. So as I just step away and let him back in now because he's screaming at the door, could you please type in the question box, what do you think, a couple of words to describe people-centered, client-driven? Just type in the chat box quickly. Okay. Sorry, question box. If you could type in the question box for me around what you mean, what you think we mean by, someone just said I don't see a chat box there. What you think we mean by being people-centered and client-driven. Any thoughts on that? If you were to have a brainstorming session with your work group, what kinds of words do you think you'd come up with? Okay.
Susie, can you see the responses?
No, I can't. I'm seeing, the last thing I see is I don't see a chat box.
Okay, first of all, we are using questions. Hopefully you can see the questions box. The chat box doesn't work for participants in GoToWebinar. So what I'm seeing is compassionate, individualized, what is important to the client, agencies that are more focused on the needs of the client, focusing on relationship before solutions, support, active listening, truly listening, we've got several of those, an individualized approach, taking the client life cycle into consideration. That's a high level response there. Open-ended questions, no cookie cutter services. So I think they get it.
Right. Awesome. So we held the same sort of what I just asked you. We just held this, we had all the people in the position that they wanted to be in now and so we had a brainstorming session, and these are the kinds of things that we came up with. So being transformational versus transactional. The history of case management and social assistance in Ontario is very transactional in nature. I was trained years ago as a gatekeeper, that I was the holder of the financial assistance, and that the need to do A, B, and C to get their check, and there wasn't a lot of transformational coaching that was happening. And so this is a huge shift for those of us that have worked in social assistance in Ontario for, as many years as I have. So the difference between being transactional and transformational, and we had heartfelt discussions about what we meant. Being a gardener versus a machine, you'll recognize that from the one of the slides in the bridges training. Really working on prevention versus responding. So really, starting to talk about that foundational prevention work of building those 11 essential resources. That relationships are key to change and learning, that element of really understanding that we must spend time building rapport before we jump into the goal setting. And historically, the work of social assistance had been very much jumping right into goal setting, a quick assessment right into, okay, how are we going to get you a job? So that taking a step back and really spending time to build the rapport and the relationship. Fewer steps and reduced wait time. No wrong door, that no means no. We might not be able to help you, but we know who can in our organization, and we're going to refer you. having more warm handoffs and introductions, you know, around if our housing division was going to be the person that needed to help that individual, that the financial case manager would introduce them and provide a warm handoff for them. More frequent connections. You can't coach properly if you don't have more frequent connections around, you know, really connecting with our clients, building that rapport, seeing them more often, not just seeing them every 6 months or once a year for an update, but truly having those coaching conversations more frequently. Empowerment-based coaching. We talked about the difference between coaching and empowerment-based coaching, and how, you know, we have another slide in the Bridges workshop around that same size circle, right? Where it's equal information flowing both ways, that, you know, a coach can hold someone accountable for their goals, but it has to be in a mutually respectful relationship. And Bridges teaches us how to change our conversations and how to use this new learning of our societal lenses to shape our conversations with our clients. Genuinely meeting people where they're at. Somebody said that in the question box. So genuinely, and we say, yes, we meet our clients where we're at, but oftentimes I'll challenge that a little bit to say, are we meeting them where they're at, or are we meeting them where we think they should be? Or are we meeting them where we last left them 3 months ago? Because so much happens day to day. So genuinely meeting clients where they're at in the moment and dancing in the moment with them. And of course, focus on building those 11 essential resources with our clients for long-term stability. So we knew that these were our key elements of what we needed to accomplish, as an organization, to, you know, that to become people-centered and client-driven, to have the client at the helm of the work, to use our Bridges knowledge, and to work towards life stabilization. Because life stabilization is a really loaded, you know, word, and it's being used a lot here in the province of Ontario. So then we started to define what is coaching. And, you know, so coaching is that relationship that helps people break through their limitations. It's like everybody could use a coach or a champion. Coaching is a process that focuses on the future. That's really important to remember, because sometimes people will say, you know, that they're not equipped for that counseling, or that, you know, some of our staff have said that they're not clinical workers, and we're like, no, coaching is a process that focuses on the future. If a client, you know, needs to get some counseling for past, and where their future goals are being hindered through the coaching process because of past traumas, then that's counseling. And sometimes some of our staff are not equipped to provide that. So that's that no means element of making referrals. We talked about asking powerful questions, right? Powerful questions in coaching are what questions and how questions. You know, what makes that important to you? How do you see yourself getting there? Not statements, right? But powerful questions that begin usually with what and how, and not why. That coaching helps the individual set their goals, identify their supports, and develop strategies. So the whole SMART goal. Does everybody know what we mean by SMART goals? Just a quick type in the chat around SMART goals. Maybe you can help me out there, Terry. So setting SMART goals.
Setting SMART goals: compassionate, non-judgmental, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. We use them all the time, unless it's specific, measurable. Yes. I'm getting some more compassionate, non-judgmentals.
Yeah. That's right. So SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Really paying attention to setting those goals with our clients and having them set that goal of which they want to work on. Successful coaching stops that writing reflex, right? Where as coaches in the past, in traditional case management, we believe that we have the answer, we have the solution, and we provide the solution to the client, rather than facilitating dialogue that helps the client get the answer themselves. So again, a shift And the ability to genuinely build rapport and trust is so crucial in the effective coaching relationship. So again, you can see the correlation with the Bridges work. How do we build trust? How do we build rapport? We learn a lot of that in Bridges Day 1. How do we coach effectively is some of the Bridges tools, but also some more than that. So we started to digest how to have a coaching conversation. We talked a lot about resisting the writing reflex, resisting that, desire to impose your own solutions and, give the client an answer, because we often want to do that so much. And I found that that was one of the biggest aha moments for me with Bridges Out of Poverty, is stopping my writing reflex and really genuinely letting the client come to their own solution. And that's a huge shift in the way that we do business here as case managers in Ontario. So we knew that we needed to do a lot of work to create a more coach-like environment within our organization. And we knew that, we had some work to do. So we started to, investigated different models. And the one that we found that we liked the most for coaching fundamentals was through CTI's coactive model. And coactive is a training institute that is focused all on coaching training. And so we had our staff complete the coaching fundamentals course through the Coactive Training Institute, which gave the fundamentals course is like an appetizer smorgasbord of all of this stuff that you see in front of you around designed alliance. So important, that crucial meeting with a client to talk about what do you each need from each other, and how is this relationship in a coaching capacity going to work. And oftentimes, historically in social services, we had not been having those difficult conversations with clients up front, around really designing the alliance of what this relationship is going to look like. Focusing on the whole person, really dancing. Like a coach builds capacity within the person and has them, so there's a lot of scripting, the power of positive thinking and all of those elements. So I would encourage everyone who hasn't heard of a proper, a good coaching model to take a look at this one, because it's fabulous. Aside from Bridges Out of Poverty, it was the best training I have ever participated in, aside from Bridges was truly my aha. So you can imagine how fantastic it was for me to have, believe so wholeheartedly in Bridges, and then find a model that is going to design and work so beautifully together that we can really start building those 11 resources with our clients. So that's, an overview of the coactive model. Now we have, and this is the slide I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to here and talk about each one of these. We developed as a result very intensive staff training. So as I mentioned, we have Bridges Out of Poverty training for all of our frontline staff. And that day touches on those coaching tools, many of which are relisted here. But Bridges is a really full, overwhelming day. And so we knew that we needed to digest this a little bit more, role play, practice. So as I mentioned, we've been having lots of training on each of the elements that you see that come out of the Bridges Out of Poverty day. And then we also, after staff had done coaching fundamentals through CTI, then we also knew that we had more coaching tools to practice, role play, work with, bring case studies to, etc. So we have 3 training phases for all of our coaching staff. One is building rapport, and how do we do that best? So we've got service excellence training, Bridges Out of Poverty training, training on the discovery session and what that could look like, doing an 11 resource assessment, etc. Building capacity is the second phase of training, and that's around continuing to build that rapport where the person is building self-efficacy and confidence. And there are a load of different tools on that, the last slide that I showed you around this evoking transformation, right? So building life-changing capacity. So that's our second phase of training. And then our third phase is to actually really be practicing and working on each of these coaching tools. And so we spend usually about 3 bullets on average for a full day of training, depending on if the staff has been with us a while and already had full day Bridges training, or is brand new to the division, or is having trouble making that transition. So the training needs assessment is very tailored and individualized for each of the staff to self-assess where they're at with each of these areas around building rapport, building capacity, and actually coaching, which is what these bullets are about. And then work with their supervisor on how much intensive training. But for a brand new staff member, it's a fair bit. So we spend time on, training on the strength-based assessment of the 11 resources. And for those of you that are familiar with Getting Ahead has a fantastic self-assessment of the 11 resources on a 1 to 5 scale. And so, turning that around, because not all clients are going through 16 sessions of Getting Ahead, but utilizing the 11 resource assessment in our coaching conversations with clients. So training staff, we have 6 Getting Ahead facilitators in our division. And so the 6 of them are championing with the rest of their teams on how to complete the strength-based assessment of the 11 resources with our clients using that foundation work from Getting Ahead. We also train and talk heavily on how to use the power of future story, the power of a blank slate, and imagine your life in 5 years' time. And it's such a powerful tool to use future story. And as you know, Bridges is about empowerment and bringing about choice and power and future story. And so, we really need to spend more than just an hour at the end of a Bridges day talking about how to actually do that. Because I found oftentimes in the one-day Bridges training that, staff would love it, absolutely love it, but there needs to be more time spent talking about how to facilitate dialogue around these tools that are so powerful. Planning backwards, again, for those of you that are familiar with Getting Ahead, is such a powerful tool around starting with the future story and planning backwards on what that can look like. And then in conjunction with the strength-based resource assessment, you've really got some meat to start talking about in a coaching capacity. Personal goal setting is another Bridges tool that's mentioned, and SMART goals is mentioned in Getting Ahead. We take it one step further in our division as well to, okay, so when the client has set the goal, often historically, we would be, focusing on how to get to that goal and what next steps we need to take to get to that goal, which was against everything that I've just mentioned, right? Planning backwards and resource assessment, what resources are going to help reach that goal. But on top of that, we found that when we were talking about a goal for a client, so say they were saying that they wanted to go back to school, we weren't focusing on what barriers there were to that change. And so we would talk about all the things to do to get back to school. And I'm sure many of you are recognizing this as some of the way that we deliver services, because it really is a way of transforming your entire service delivery model to use these tools in a very empowering way. And, it's a lot of work, but the clients are reporting that they are having more meaningful conversations with their staff. So we know, and staff are reporting that they're much more satisfied in their role and the work that they're doing is meaningful. And so, that's pretty powerful in itself, that we're getting feedback already that there's more meaning to the appointments from both ends. So with our personal goal setting, we talk about using SMART goals, and that's wonderful, but we also take it one step further to identify the barriers to change. So for that client who says they want to go back to school, we need to find out what are the barriers of actually, if they've been saying that for 3 years, what are the barriers that's stopping or preventing them from actually following through on that? What's happened in the past to hinder that goal? And it could be quitting smoking. It could be like, there's so many different areas that you could be working on, but whatever the goal is, you need to talk about what those barriers are. And then, sometimes we took it that far, but we didn't actually take it the next step. The next step to the barriers to change around, okay, is that a barrier that is controllable or uncontrollable for me? And so you can see how this would be a really in-depth conversation with a client, right? Around, is the barrier controllable or uncontrollable? Because if it's uncontrollable, then I need to figure out a coping mechanism. And if it's controllable, then I need to figure out how to act. If it's within my control, then I can actually do something about it. But if it's not, if the barrier is not controllable, for example, an addict who's living with someone who uses still, and is trying to stay clean. If it's not controllable, or if it's not within their control, then we need to figure out coping strategies. And if it is controllable, so it gets the client thinking about, even a client said to me once through Getting Ahead process, and this personal goal setting said that they really started to see how they were making a lot of excuses and not actually coming up with a plan to act about the barriers. And so it has been life-altering even myself as I think of my own goals, to start to digest and really break down what's getting in the way of me achieving that, and is it within my control or not. So I hope that helps, because we spend a lot of time talking about that. That's about a half day alone, talking about goals your clients have told you that they're setting, and what does the conversation look like next. Then we also talk about bracketing, and that's intensive training as well. Bracketing can be used to help narrow a conversation. It can also be used to help narrow when the client has so much going on. It's helpful in circular story structure when a client comes in with so much stuff going on, as we learn in Bridges, and the things are flying, but you only got a half an hour. It's a really great tool to use when you might say, it sounds like you have a lot going on, Sally, and I really want to help you out with all those things. But as you know, we only booked a half an hour for today. So if you could pick one thing that we're going to focus on for today, which one of those 10 things would it be? And by doing that, again, that's empowerment-based coaching, because previously our staff, I can only speak from my experience, but our staff would say, wow, Sally, it sounds like you've got a lot going on and you don't have a place to sleep tonight, so we better figure that out. And Sally might not think that that's the priority. The priority could be totally different for Sally on the 10 things that she's mentioned. So we were prioritizing, and we didn't realize that we were prioritizing. So by digesting, using the tool of bracketing, it really has helped us to shift, putting the power back to the client on, where they want to go with this and what do they want to talk about as a first goal. So we're not picking it for them. Bracketing can also be used, to just help narrow the circular story structure. Again, bring it down to something manageable to talk about. Mental models, as we all know, for those of us entrenched in Bridges, is a super powerful way to learn. It's the visual of something. It's very powerful. For those of you that have not ever practiced using mental models, there's some great activities in the Bridges workbook. But it is hugely powerful when used in conjunction with planning backwards and future story. So again, you can see how this training all molds in together. Adult voice and mediation, there are also several examples in the Bridges training supplement workbook around working with a partner to use mediation techniques, the what, the why, the how. And mediation respectfully takes someone to a place of next time. Instead of scolding or talking about what should or shouldn't have been done, it takes the client or the student, whatever, to a place of, okay, this didn't work. Here's why it didn't work. And next time, here's what I may try differently. And so it really helps us in our de-escalation strategies. We use it for a lot of our training on de-escalation around staying in adult voice, regardless of what voice the client is speaking to us in, and using mediation techniques to help de-escalate, along with, for example, bracketing can help to de-escalate as well. So those were some intensive takeaways from the Bridges training that we really focus on with our clients to, or with our staff, to start to practice the work of the Bridges tools. Combine that with what they've learned in the coaching fundamentals. Designed alliance. What does that first appointment look like with a person when they are identifying what goals they want to work on? Before you jump into goal setting, you have to have a designed alliance of the parameters of your relationship. And historically, we had never done that. We had not had conversations with clients around, okay, here's what my role is, and maybe you guys do, but we had not in our division had those relationship conversations around, here's what my role is as your coach, as your service provider, whatever, as your counselor, whatever role you're in, teacher. And here's what I need from this relationship, or here's what I'm funded to do, or whatever the case may be, and what are some things that are important to you. And that can include conversations about what you value, what are deal breakers for you, past relationships with coaches or service providers that have not worked. It can be so many different things that come into that designed alliance. So you're really dancing in the moment with the client to build that rapport, using all your knowledge from Bridges as well. Holding the client's agenda is a really hard thing to do, because the client, again, if you've bracketed with them and you've smart goal set, then holding the client's agenda is difficult when you're in human services, because you have a really strong writing reflex. So you may want to veer off, and you may want to start talking about something else or provide solutions instead of just talking it through. And so holding the client's agenda rather than our own agenda is something that we also spend time on. and holding the focus, because that is difficult, particularly when someone's living in a tyranny of the moment and they're in reactive versus proactive mode. And we're trying to talk of a place of future story, and they're in the moment, right? So holding the focus, there are strategies and techniques to help us hold the focus in these coaching conversations with our clients. I touched on powerful questions with you, but they are, open-ended, what and how primarily. So really a lot of using adult voice, question format, what and how type questions. And we spend a lot of time actually practicing that, because that is a really difficult shift for our staff. Changing to question adult format, clients in the driver's seat, is a huge shift for us in our service delivery. Again, I've been here for a long time, and it's taken a long time to get to this point, but we're seeing the results, and it's very different results for us, which I'll talk about at the end. And then coaching the person versus the topic, and that's a really difficult as well. So there's, again, tools and strategies that we focus on in this training around really coaching the person to meet their goal of the topic, rather than focusing on solutions of the topic. So the role of a coach is really about building, again, evoking transformation, building transformative thought. I can do it. The spiritual resources that we talk about in Bridges around hope, around believing that they have choice and power in their future, etc. So really focusing on the person as opposed to solutions on the topic. And then finally, last but not least, we talk about levels of listening. Just type for me to make sure that I've still got y'all, because that's a long slide. Just type for me in the question box a yes or a no. Do you ever find yourself formulating your answer as the person is presenting their issue? A yes or a no there for me.
Are you seeing them, Susie?
I'm just trying to, I don't know why it keeps going back up to the top. No, I'm not.
Okay. Tons
Do we
of
have
yeses.
yeses in there?
A lot of yeses.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just
Right.
depends,
And so,
but more yeses.
right. Thank you, everyone, for your honesty, because that's a huge piece in our transformation of the way we deliver service, right? Around not coming to solution. And it's so difficult to do. I've been entrenched in this more than anybody in our division now for 7-8 years. And I still find myself jumping to solution before, when somebody's asking me something, before I just openly listen to what the issue is. And so levels of listening is an intensive couple of hours that we spend on talking about 3 levels of listening: internal, external, and then focused. And so we talk about, where you're at with your level of listening. And as a coach, you can't be internally listening. And so really talking about when you're in that role of coach, practicing. And each of these bullets is practice, practice, practice. So they're working in pairs. They're bringing case studies forward. We're presenting case studies if they don't have a case study from their caseload, and we're practicing it because, and we try and meet, again, all the levels of adult learning. We've got kinesthetic hands-on learners, we've got visual learners, we've got auditory learners. So we're talking about it, we're writing things out, and we're practicing. And, not everybody's comfortable with all of that. And so if you've got people that are really uncomfortable, we don't ask anybody to role play in front of the group or anything like that. There's always people that will volunteer to role play, but we would never mark them out on that, because as soon as someone tells me I need to role play, I'm not even thinking about the topic anymore. Now I'm worried about the fact that I have to stand up and role play. So it takes me out of learning mode. And that's what we learn a lot in the principles of adult learning, right? That we want to keep you in learning mode. So this is, again, all of these trainings are tailored to the unique needs of the staff, where they feel that they're strong, where they want to focus. We're trying to champion to have, a strength-based team. So team members that say, I think I'm really good at bracketing. So, I'm gonna help champion that and use examples at team meetings with my team on how I've used that successfully. Or someone else may say, I've been doing really good at setting SMART goals and personal goal setting with clients, and I'd like to share some of that. So, really getting staff practicing it training, practicing, and sharing, so that we're creating a community of practice type of environment within our organization to be sharing and continually growing. Because this shift in our service delivery genuinely requires people to have a growth mindset where we're going to continuously learn together and get better at it. When we're in the business of people, we can never just take it off and say, oh yeah, I've got that, you know, I'm good with people. And so it's about a mindset of continuously developing and learning together. So our 3 training phases include a full Bridges Out of Poverty day, and then all of these bullets that I've talked about as well to really practice. I threw this quote in here because we use it in our training day, and it's very powerful because it really helps us to remember that none of this is going to happen without rapport. And if you as an organization, if you find that generally speaking, you're spending more time trying to change the behavior of the client versus changing the rapport of the client, then you may find this information you know, really helpful for you as an organization to help make that shift to become more of a people-centered culture as well. We all want the best. It's just whether or not we actually, you know, are able to practice it, because it's difficult and it's different than what we've done in the past. So as you know, we have our Bridges model. Many of you have seen this before, and many of you can, you know, identify where you're at in the model as well. I wanted to share with you a little bit about how transforming our services to match, well, we didn't even know when we were transforming our services that we were matching the model of the province. So that was what was really cool and that I was excited to share with you all. But once we knew that we were on the right track, then it was about really trying to figure out where we're at with this model, and again, provide that intensive training that I've talked to you about. So there's our triple lens in our community of Peterborough, building our Bridges community here. And so, you know, many of the things that I've talked about already. So building, you know, capacity and critical mass of understanding with Bridges Out of Poverty training. So if you don't have a Bridges community trainer for your community, then that's a great start of your roadmap of becoming a Bridges community, right? Having the training and then hopefully certifying someone to be able to provide that training across your community with your partners that are working with mutual clients. That has been so phenomenal for us here for sure. Then launching Getting Ahead, which many of you are doing already, and that's fantastic. And then Staying Ahead. Just type for me quickly again in the question box. Have any of you launched any element of staying ahead for your communities? Those of you that said yes to Getting Ahead. Yeah, I've got a problem with my chat box, Terry, so just let me know. Do we have anybody launching Staying Ahead?
I'm looking, and I'm having a little problem seeing it too. Jawanda, are you seeing yes, no to Staying Ahead?
Yes, there are a few yeses.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I mean, Staying Ahead again is about moving that needle of impact, right? So running, Getting Ahead, I'm so happy to see that so many of you are doing that. And then Staying Ahead again is that like long-term healing of continuing to build those 11 resources, because the clients learn about it in Getting Ahead, but there's so much more work that needs to be done through a coaching relationship, but also through partnerships with your community to help build those 11 resources. And then of course, we're running financial literacy programs as well, which is an element, as you know, of that Bridges model as well. So we have income tax clinics, and that it's phenomenal, the community partnerships that are coming together for financial literacy programs. At the institutional level, a lot of what I've talked about today is our institutional level of actually implementing Bridges within our organization. And so these are some of the examples that we've done: adapting the way we communicate. We have a drop-in case manager at reception. So honoring the agency time of our clients and honoring the tyranny of the moment. We have a worker that is located at reception with our reception staff that is there for crisis management. So a client, you know, a philosophical shift in our thinking is that a client will not leave our building in crisis without information. Whereas a couple of years ago, clients would be told, you don't have an appointment, so here's one for 3 days away. So dealing in the moment. Not that that means that we're going to get into a full coaching conversation, but we're going to help the client put out the fire so that we can move into motivational interviewing, right? We have acknowledgement of positive change talk. I talked to you already about the client advisory group, and we have a formal terms of reference. A lot of those clients are from our Getting Ahead and Staying Ahead group because they see the bigger picture with us now of the Bridges model as well. And so we have a lot more buy-in from our Getting Ahead and Staying Ahead clientele to join that group, but there are a few that haven't. We have feedback cards throughout our office saying, how was your experience with us? And do you have any ideas for improved services? And that's how we're starting to see the shift in, you know, our ultimate goal of becoming a people-centered culture is that our client leaves the building feeling better. We're building self-efficacy. We are helping them to believe in themselves to reach those goals that they're setting. So that's a, you know, again, a fundamental shift in that it's not going to be transactional. It's going to be transformational work that we're doing. We've built bridges and you know, that the honoring the societal lens into our performance management strategies. We have a call monitoring system, for example, that actually one of the questions on the template when we listen to an interaction from a client and a worker is, you know, did the worker make a deposit to the relationship bank? So really bringing alive the you know, just the fundamentals of bridges and what's important around that relationship. Did we miss opportunities to make a deposit? And that's been great conversations with staff to normalize bridges within our organization. We've revamped our workshops and we increased our attendance in doing so and having the clients involved in creating the workshop with us from the get-go and setting the parameters of when it will be, where it will be, what will be served for lunch, etc. And the boundaries of, you know, group behavior and all of those things. By shifting and empowering and not being a teacher at the front of the class, we increased our attendance on workshops from 57% average to 96% average. And that is the hugest outcome. That is absolutely hugest, I just said, but that is the biggest, one of our biggest outcomes that we started to see, which was phenomenal. I've talked to you today about shifting from traditional case management to life stabilization coaching, with the foundation being those 11 essential resources for stability. And then, you know, really importantly is striving to become a people-centered culture at all levels of the organization. So for example, if I expect for the staff on my team to be good coaches with their clients, then I need to be modeling that behavior. I need to be coaching them the same way that I expect that they're going to be coaching their clients. So again, not a, you know, creating an environment of mutually respectful relationships all around, because it comes top down, bottom up, middle through the middle. It's a culture shift where we are going to be people-centered, where we try to be a yes culture, to say yes where we can, where we try to have every interaction, you know, and sky's the limit here, but every interaction end in the person feeling better about themselves, whether it's the staff leaving a supervisor's office or the client leaving the coach's office. So really trying to be, and that includes leadership training, et cetera, and trying to do so, and continually talking about communication and engagement strategies within our organization to get the staff and the clients involved in the decision-making process. And at the community lens, I've talked about this a lot already, but workplace stability training, you know, training for the private sector, getting ahead, staying ahead in conjunction with our community partners. So for our staying ahead workshops, we have trained community organizations and partners come in who have been trained in bridges and come in and present information on the 11 resources, because not one organization is going to be able to help the clients build all 11 resources. So we must partner together to figure out who's helping clients build what resource, and not bring, but build what resource. And so that's, again, been a huge element of the community lens. The workplace stability training for our local employers, which now, that will be taken over by our service system manager. So, it was so beautiful to see that when the province split the municipalities work and the employment work to the service system manager, the service system manager certified a bridges trainer. So that's how I knew that we were doing impactful bridges work as well. That was another sign for me that the minute that service system manager got awarded, because it was an RFP proposal process where lots of people bid to become the service system manager, that when our local college got that contract through the province, they certified a Bridges trainer. And in fact, I trained her on the most recent online train the trainer. So again, that was just a beautiful thing to see as far as creating our Bridges community. And then, of course, share strategies. This conference is phenomenal for sharing what's happening in each of our organizations and in each of our communities, whether it be in Canada, the US, or anywhere else, that we're all doing impactful work and sharing in a community practice, steal ideas from one another. That was why I wanted to present this information today, to share with you how impactful this has been for both our clients as well as our staff. That through our staff surveys, they are reporting, more meaningful work, that they feel like the work they're doing is more meaningful than before. And that's a fantastic feeling, to know that we're not only helping the clients, but we're creating an organization that feels better about the work they do. It's what many of us went to school for, and then we got stuck in the processes of, the fix-it approach along the way. And so this is opening up a huge opportunity for us as a community to keep doing what's in the best interest of people at the core of our heart and the work that we do. So that's why I was thrilled to share with you what we're doing here in Peterborough, get some questions, hear what other I was going to say municipalities, but other communities are some sort of level, and share implementation strategies and learn from one another across the board, because there's so much more that we can do with the Bridges work. And this is just one example of that, of taking it and really building it into the constructs of our organization. So I wanted to leave 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions. So that's fantastic, despite my coworker causing a fuss there for a little bit, my fur coworker. Again, I apologize for that. Then we're open for questions, comments, or any chat, because that's a lot of information.
Susie,
and I
have a suggestion for you. Well, can you take your questions box out? You know how to pop it out of the dashboard? Yeah. And then say at the top, it says show answered questions. Click that, so it doesn't just show you the answered questions. So see if you can see more of the questions and comments.
Oh.
And scroll all the way to the bottom. Scroll all the way to the bottom.
The problem is that it's not scrolling. Oh, wait. You might have just helped me there. Thank you very much.
Questions need to be unclicked.
Yeah, I unclicked show answered questions. And the last thing I see still is I don't see a chat box at 12:07 by Yasmin.
Okay.
That's the last thing that I see.
Let me read some things to you. Okay. Wait. Okay. I'm sure that there's urgent need to answer these questions.
Yeah, go ahead and ask them, because
okay. First of all, there are several questions about like staying ahead. How do you keep people engaged, and how are you doing all of this during COVID? How do you keep in touch with people when you can't do the home visits and so forth?
Yeah. So the one thing that has definitely suffered is the impactful client face-to-face meetings. But because we're in the middle of transformation, we were doing really well with that pre-COVID. Now, where clients have Zoom, or where they have the ability, then we're having those coaching meetings done virtually, because we're not seeing clients face-to-face still, and most of us are working virtually. But staff training is continuing and hot and heavy, because we have an implementation of January 1st. And so that is all being done through Microsoft Teams or Zoom. And Zoom has a great way of breaking off into pairs. So it's been actually quite helpful.
Okay. Well, how about, it seems like your services are part of a governmental agency. How are you funding your mentoring service?
We are funded through the province. as well as through the municipality, so through our local taxpayers, for our service provision, which includes training.
Okay, this is a
So that includes our training.
Okay, so they're funding the mentoring process and the entire process. What about the writing reflex? Can you talk about that a little more from Christine?
Yeah,
What is meant by
the writing? Yeah, so the writing reflex is, we learn about that in Bridges Day 1 and 2 briefly, but again, we really dig into it in this intensive training that we've been doing. And it really is about that question that I asked you. Are you thinking of the solution with your client before they've even acknowledged that there's a problem, before they're even aware that there's a problem? Are you going to, you know, fix it solution mode, offering advice on solving the problem before the client is even aware? So oftentimes in human services, teaching, etc., in any human services profession, we've got a plan for the client before the client even knows there's a problem.
Okay, good.
I hope that helps.
Yes, I'm sure it did. Lisa Temple has a question about crisis resolution. She wants to know how that works in relation to transitioning to longer-term coaching.
So our drop-in case manager, that's rotated through different staff because we didn't have funding for a position. So we had people who really believe in the Bridges philosophy volunteer to work a day a month, basically at the front desk, and take their work with them, sort of thing. And so that crisis management piece happens upon crisis. So we have intake and referral in our new model that do the intake, that put out the fire, that give immediate, you know, they grant the case, they give immediate referrals to supports that might be, you know, let the client know where the food banks are, etc. And when the client is granted and has their first, whatever it is, their first program or service that they're applying for, whether it's childcare or financial supports or whatever. So the fire is out, basically. Then they move on to that discovery session with who will become their caseworker. So the intake worker books it in with the client service worker, they're called, who will be the coach. And they have at least an hour-long discovery session to design the alliance of what that relationship is going to look like. And that might not be the very first meeting. Sometimes the first meeting is better off being a meet and greet. It depends. Do you know the client? You know, what's the history, etc. Right? But that's in a nutshell how the triage works.
Great. We have a question about how many clients are you serving at the moment, and do your coaches get paid? Several different people.
Yeah, so we have a caseload of just under 4,000. I think it was 3,800 last month. Through COVID, our caseload went down because the federal government was issuing what we called CERB benefits. So for a few months there, our clientele received a different pot of money. So we lost contact with a lot of our clients, and we're trying to reconnect as CERB has been ended in September. Sorry, what was the second question, Terry? Funding.
So the coaches get paid.
Yeah, so they are permanent staff. With the coach is called a client service worker. They previously were called caseworkers or case managers, and previously before that, caseworkers, and they are paid full-time staff. And their role now in the new model for January 1st is, so we've been transitioning, as I mentioned, all along, but the role for January 1st clearly is that worker is going to have a caseload of 75 clients that they are going to meet with minimally every month to have to set SMART goals, do the 11 Rs, all the things I've talked about. So we're taking away the program integrity, the application piece, the monitoring eligibility, and the whole coaching relationship lies within that caseload of 75 to work on individual goal setting with each of their clients. And all of the coaches / client service workers are a part of our staffing complement. So we wrote this up as this is what we need for staff for a caseload of 75.
Thanks, Susie. A couple of related questions. Does the Bridges Out of Poverty Trainer Certification fully equip you for these coaching services? From Janice, and then someone else asked, I think it was Keith, do you have a training manual that can be used for the coach training, can be shared with us? Can it be shared with us?
Okay, so a couple of questions there. So the first one does Bridges Out of Poverty trainer certification equip you? I would, yeah. So the trainer certification trains the new trainers in how to use those tools in that first Bridges tools slide. The one that I showed you of the intensive staff training also incorporates in training from the Canadian Coaches Federation and training from the CTI model that I showed you, and Bridges training, and just years of human services training that I have created for our division. But our staff also have taken the coaching fundamentals and Bridges Out of Poverty. So then when I'm tailoring a training plan for them, it depends on how confident they're feeling in which tools, and we're creating individualized training plans for them, if that makes sense. So it's not like it isn't a training manual. We have different sessions for different roles because each of the roles have to focus. So the coaching training is an element of Bridges, of CTI, and of stuff that we have created locally.
Okay. Thank you. There's a question about data management. I'm sorry, I don't know if I wrote down who asked that. You can give us your name again if you would like. But what data management software are you using? They're looking for software that is coaching oriented rather than social work oriented.
Yeah, and so are we. So we are in the process. Yeah, we're in the process because we're in transition, right? So our launch for this right now is all staff training this year, which I mean has been helpful because we have Microsoft Teams and Zoom. So our launch of the expectation that the staff are going to begin this intensive coaching relationship has been a slow process, but the actual hard launch is January 1st because that's when our funding changes, and that's when the province is actually funding us for life stabilization. Before, we were funded to get people jobs. Now we're being funded more for the pre-employment as of January 1st. So I hope that helps to clarify that people that are operating under the SSM, the Service System Manager, they will be the ones to get people jobs. So as we actually lost jobs this summer, July 1st, with a 6-month contract because we're unionized, 6-month notice for our union employees. Anybody that was in the employment counselor position was laid off because our office is no longer working at getting people jobs. As far as data collection, we have been spreadsheeting and data collecting on all of our Getting Ahead grads, and we report on that regularly. We need to create something more broader for people to use for their caseload, but it will be still based on the 11 essential resources. So we are currently, previously we used employment readiness scale, which was created out in Vancouver. So you guys can Google that as well. It helps give us, charting and graphing on helping to move clients forward in all areas of their life. And previously we used that, but the province has told us that we're not going to be able to use that anymore and that they're coming out with a tool for us. So we are waiting for that for our January 1st launch. So I know that was a loaded answer, but because we're in transition, I don't have a full database to share with you at this point.
Okay. Christine asked that question, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. A lot of people are, just curious about your online training process and the timeline and how you train your staff and whether they all get Bridges and that type of things. But I want to warn you, we are down to 1 minute. And
okay.
Sozi very early on said that, how do you train your staff really to be aware of the unconscious bias? I mean, this is a big process. Just quickly.
It is a huge process. I would say Bridges is your answer to begin with. You have got to build critical mass of understanding with Bridges Out of Poverty as your foundation. And we began that, as I mentioned, in 2012. So we didn't get to this point where we're ready to embed it into a whole philosophical shift until we have been years of sometimes banging our head against the wall with the unconscious bias stuff, and that will be a constant. So in answer to your question, Bridges training is mandatory for all of our staff. They do not get to work with a client until they've had Bridges Out of Poverty training, and that is mandatory. And it's mandatory to have it every 2 years in our division, because Bridges is not something that you can just off and go, oh yeah, I had Bridges 7 years ago. Because I learned something new about how to interact with people in general at every session I facilitate, let alone if I were sitting in as the trainee. I learn from the audience and vice versa. So you don't ever stop learning with this respect. So I hope that helps to answer that. It starts with bridges, and then you'll get to the point where you can start to really think about that philosophical shift. Now, remember, my background is in human services and as a life coach. And so taking that information and adding in bridges has made it a dream come true for me.
That's
to be
great.
able
That's
to,
great.
yeah, build from that.
Super. So I want to, we're going to close in just a moment, but I want to ask Jawanda, can they get the recording? How do they get the recording? That's the question that's coming up. And while Jawanda is of this session, thank you. Jawanda is answering, if you would at this time, Susie will get a report of all of your comments. If you would like to share your thanks with her or what part of this you found most meaningful, I'm sure she'd appreciate seeing that. Jawanda, do you know how they will?
All right, everyone, if you would go to ahaprocess.com/breakouts, you can click on the name of the session title, and there you'll see the PowerPoints. It also appears as though the videos are being posted there, as well as being posted on our YouTube channel. So,
okay, good, great. Well, we look forward to seeing you on Susie on YouTube. So I would like to thank you, Susie Johnson-Smith, for a wonderful breakout presentation. It was great, and it's great having you as a national trainer, both of you. And thank Jawanda as well for helping us out with the tech support. Thank you all for being a part of this, and please, again, send Susie a message. Her last slide there, I think you've noticed, has her email address there. And so please ask any questions or more detailed questions of Susie through email. And I know she will respond, right?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any last words, Susie?
No, just thank you all for your time. And I apologize again for the interruptions, but thank you for your patience.
Thank you all. Have a good day. Rest of the conference tomorrow.
Bye.